All right, it's time to close the books on 2025 and our farmer conversations. Today, we are going to have our third check-in with farmer Ben Klick from Ohio and Jamie Kress from Idaho. If you've listened to the other episodes with them, how this year has kind of been an up and down. We're going to find out how it finished and kind of peek ahead to 2026. So Ben was busy the day we talked to him trying to move some grain around his area, and it was getting ready to be cold and maybe some snow. But Jamie Kress, she had hopped on a plane and was in D.C. for some meetings with some of her friends at the National Association of Wheat Growers. So she's in D.C. for policy meetings, arrived just in time for a big winter storm. So we'll talk about that a little bit and just kind of what that means for what's going on back home. So that's what we're going to talk about here in this installment of the MTOM podcast. I'm Paul Yeager. Thanks for checking in with us on this podcast, which comes out each and every Tuesday. We're always glad that you give us a chance. And now let's wrap things up with Jamie. And first, Ben. I had this whole setup. I was going to do something about Ohio State, Indiana. I was going to do football, just what kind of a weird year it was. But then it's just really dumb cold right now. What's it like for you today?
Yeah, I tell you, actually at the current moment, it's about 37 degrees and probably 35-mile-an-hour winds today. It's been a very breezy day. We're trying to do a multitude of things like most farmers are this time of year, haul grain and work in the garage and try to clean up some fence rows and things of that nature. But burning brush wasn't really a good option for today, as we thought it might start out the morning as. So we had to kind of limit ourselves on that this afternoon. So
otherwise, the brush would burn and end up in like West Virginia or something.
Yeah, it was actually at a south wind, so it was going to blow everything. It was going to blow all of the corn fodder and everything to Michigan, which I don't want to give them all my good NP and K. We got to keep that on our fields, not them guys up north. So
don't give anything away for free.
That's right.
You're also sitting in the cab of the truck. Are you hauling too today?
Yeah. Yep. So as most guys are, well, not most guys, us poor guys that have to drive truck every day, we don't mind having to haul in the slop and the salt and the stuff, but everybody that doesn't have to drive every day can, kind of pick and choose more on their days of hauling in. That's what's kind of funny. The weather lines have been very short, really in and out. We've been hauling into a bungie plant up in Bellevue, Ohio, north central Ohio area there, and it's just been slow. I mean, right into the pit, dump, in and out. I mean, very, very odd for this time of the year. So other than that, it's just been bases have creeped up. Actually, we have a positive basis today in January, which is very unheard of at our local buggy plant. Usually we're 10, 15 under, more so than not. So that's kind of crazy this time of year. So it kind of goes to show you that there's, at least in this eastern corridor, there's not the grain either out there or guys aren't coming off of it yet. So which is odd for this time of year. So
well, I was going to make you speculate. What do you think it is?
I know just from my connections, especially here further east into Ohio and Pennsylvania, that the elevator I've mentioned that my sister works for, they only took in about 60% of the grain that they typically do in a normal year, corn and beans. So I know they're short on both that, and that's the same story for majority of the places around here. And then, the 77 was kind of the cut line here for rain and weather, and I know the further east of 77 you went, the worse the yields got. We've finalized everything, and we were APH or 5 to 10 bushel less on all of our bean acres, and corn acres were APH and maybe a few bushel higher, but nothing to brag home about. Let's put it that way.
Well, you mentioned the snow. I was going to ask you, what's the snow cover like right now?
Yeah, so we got a couple inches. We got winter wheat planted here at home. I'm actually staring out here out my left window. Where we're at here directly, we got 2-3 inches of snow on the ground blowing around, and they're talking and squawking about some big snowstorm coming up. I will see if it makes it here over the weekend, but I know the places we haul feed into are getting phone calls left and right, guys wanting to get feed and stuff ahead of the weather over the weekend and the next week. So that's going to kind of make for a busy rest of the week for us in the truck side of things. So now maybe we won't get anything on that, but they're talking 10, 12 inches of snow possible for us. So that'll be interesting.
Ooh. Yeah, see, we're going to miss that. By the time this airs, we'll know what really happened. But the reason I
Yeah.
ask about the snow is, and you mentioned the weather line. This year, I kind of watched where you were at, and you were like on both sides of it a couple of times this year. Do you think you ended up on the dry side or the wet side that was the bigger impact on your yield?
Yeah. So when we talked in the sprayer there this summer, we were in a just monstrosity of rain. It couldn't stop raining. So we had the wettest June on record and the driest August on record. So the rain shut off. The last adequate rain we got was like the 24th of July. We had like 6 to 8 tenths on most of our farms, and then we didn't get another drop till the middle of September. So I mean, we couldn't even buy a dew in the morning, let alone a rainfall. So
Because usually, if it rains so much, the root system doesn't go.
correct.
Did that
Yep.
hold up?
Yeah, I tell you, we were fortunate with our corn. Like I said, most of our corn acres were planted the first 2 weeks of May, just the way it turned out on the ground that we had corn on, and that corn did just fine. Test weights were off, but yield was okay. Now beans was on some of our heavier farms this year, so it was a little wetter in the start. They suffered greatly, as obviously as we know, no rain in August and September doesn't usually lead to good things in soybeans, especially here in the Eastern Corn Belt. So that led to subpar bean yields for the second year in a row for us. So there's a lot of sour taste in the mouths of farmers as far as growing soybeans over here. I'll tell you that.
And was that because were they late into the ground because of the moisture?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if they would have been maybe normal planting date, that story might have been different.
Yeah, the beans we did get in relatively on time the beginning of May. Turned out APH or a couple bushel better. But there was not as many of those I would have liked to have as most of us can attest for. So
I want to go back to something you said about your basis, and you're talking and the 60% number that, just not coming in. Are you trucking things that you pre-sold or selling because basis is what it is right now?
no, so for soybeans, typically, usually we'll set hedge derived contracts, and I'll set our basis, here in January, and it's just worked out good that we were able to take advantage of some of those $11 plus soybean market rallies, and then actually capture a decent basis on top of that. So that was a win. Now I wish I would have sold, everything in the bin, but that's just the joke amongst every farmer. It's always hindsight's always 20/20 no matter what. Same with corn. When corn was creeping up there on the March contracts, bases for corn here have been anywhere from 25 to 50 over so far. Again, because guys aren't coming off of it, and there's just not the quantity of it for the feed mills that need it, right? So wish we would have sold some more of that 490 corn than we did, but we sold some. That'll get us covered for what we need for land rents in January and those kind of things, and we'll kind of be patient on the rest, because God forbid we'd sell more to profit. We'll wait, and it's always going to go up, right? It's always going to continue higher during the trend. So
I'm sorry, were you in some type of time warp in the last week?
that's right. That's right.
When you saw that news from the government, I mean, what did it say for Ohio? And did you dive into it?
This is funny. This is my personal kind of conspiracy theory, right? So, when we talked about a nationwide increase of 2 million acres of corn, right? So I look back personally from all the text, emails, the social media posts about, make sure, they were talking about this payment coming here in the beginning of 2026, and, get into your FSA office, update your acres, make sure everything's correct, right? And they were, at that time, in my opinion, they were already talking about, corn, the payment for corn acres was going to be greater. So you can't tell me that there wasn't some people that might have, in my opinion, maybe fudged some lines a little bit. And there we are. Now we have 2 million more acres of corn because the corn payment's $21 more an acre or whatever it is, right? So, but that's just my theory on it. I don't really think there was 2 million more acres of corn. I also don't think we had a 186 yield average across the United States either. Even my friends in the western states I talked to had good yields, but not enough to where I think it would carry like in some past years where we've had substantial yields. So
you are not alone in that first theory. That is one I saw floated here today or yesterday online. The second one about the numbers, the way we explained it on the show, at least what the discussion that was given, is there was all this silage. Man, that's a lot of acres for silage. And can the Dakotas really compensate for less in Iowa and Illinois? Those are those two things that I just not sure everybody online is buying.
Yep. I would agree with that. And although who knows, with the way this beef market has trended, maybe there was some more silage put into a bunk than I thought. But at the same time, those guys still got to buy feeder calves like we are. And I know our barns aren't as full as they typically are, just with the raw price of what it costs to put feeders in a barn and have them on legs. So I don't know. There's part of you that's like, yeah, I wish. I don't know. There's just so much uncertainty in these reports, and I just feel like they just get worse every year. And the dramatic ties to the market it has, good, bad, or indifferent, is over dramatic in my opinion. And I mean, there's a lot of money lost or gained, but more times lost in the market after these chain-jerk reactions from these reports, and that's what's really frustrating.
Again, one more thing on the basis, because this is the next story that I'm curious about. Is there going to be, or are your neighbors and you yourself going to keep those bin doors welded shut no matter how much the basis improves, to kind of get you to rethink no matter what that price is? I mean, is that enough to make you scratch your head and go,
I think, I'm personally, I like basis contracts. I know my dad and I bicker on that a little bit back and forth, but I think if, in this time of the year, if we can take advantage of some good bases and haul in and then, play the market the way you want, or even like on beans, free DP is a big thing now. So why do I want to sweep a bin in July if I don't have to? I'm trying to spray and do everything else and it's 150 degrees when I could clean them out now for free DP through September, then just pick up the phone and call when I want, right? So that's a big one, because these places are needing the grain, right? Especially with going into the fall with this new Louis Dreyfus plant coming in Central Ohio. That's going to eat up a lot of beans. So that's going to be really interesting as we go forward here into the 2026 crop season too. So see what acres do.
If you had to grade 2025, do you have an assignment for it?
I'd give it a C-. I give it a C-. We had you couldn't ask for a nicer harvest. I mean, beautiful weather. Yields obviously weren't there, but I'll take the nice weather. If you're gonna have a bad crop to get out of the field, at least it's gonna be nice weather to get it out rather than having to mud it out or snow it out. But corn was okay. Like I said, corn turned out good or average, and beans were just subpar. But that's second year in a row. So I guess, like every year, you learn something. You learn things to maybe adapt and change. And I think in the times you're in with downward market trends and high input prices, it's inevitably going to make us better farmers, better businessmen, crunch numbers better, maybe pay closer attention to things that need addressed, both on the farm and financially, and all aspects. I think are going to make us better growers, in my opinion.
You mention your animals. What's your outlook for them?
So it's funny. Beef were 60 cents off the high. We sell everything on the rail. So beef were 60 cents off the high, and now they've come back 30 to 35 cents. So if they could stay where they're at now, no complaints. So I'll take that over again after a dramatic, a tweet from the president or whatever's, made the markets just completely overreact and fall on their face for a hot minute. If we could just kind of stay where we're at a modest, I call this a modest price and margin, I think we'd be just fine. But we both know that's not going to happen. So
what? Since when? Any urgency or temptation to hold back any animals?
No, in my opinion, because all that does is all that's going to do more days on feed. Feed's expensive. If they're ready to go, they're ready to go. And you contract some, we cash some. So as long as we can keep playing that adequately enough, I think we'll be okay, in my opinion. So, like I said, barns aren't completely full like they should, like we have in the past, but we're at like 80% capacity. So kind of see how that plays going forward. Feeder prices haven't done nearly the up and down, or I guess I should just say down, like the fat price did there for, a few weeks or month and a half. So, but I think if things kind of maintain their balance now. I think it'll be okay.
Do you have everything booked, paid for, or at least anything locked in for 26 here as we sit in early 26?
Yeah, so this is the first year we basically didn't have hardly anything prepay as far as inputs for fertilizer and chem go. Now, obviously, seed, we did that like normal, but and I'm glad we didn't. I mean, we thought about spreading some potash last fall, and I'm glad we didn't. It's come down a little bit, but now how far is that going to come down? Your potashes and your DAPs and MAPs, at least locally here, have kind of just settled out. They haven't really done much here the last couple of weeks. So thinking about pulling the trigger on some of that. I know on our farm, we looked closely at our soil test levels from last year when we got samples pulled, and I think we're going to cut back on our MAP and DAP, and at least for corn-wise, we're going to look into some more phosphates in the liquid form for corn to get us at a little cheaper cost for the year, and spread straight potash on beans. We can hold those levels for a year on beans and get by and add in some micros to the sprayer, and I think that's the route we're going to go this year to shave some corners a little bit.
And do you have any flexibility on if you get a wild hair to change any acres from one crop to another, or is everything there locked in too?
We were 100 acres heavier on corn last year, and we're going to be another about 75 acres heavier on corn this year, just for the simple fact of in this general area with the bases we've had and are maybe looking to continue having, and the yields we've been able to raise with our current weather patterns as far as wet early and dry late. If those continue, corn is more conducive to grow here in Northeast Ohio. So,
even with the bean facility that's opening up, that might change the dynamic.
Yeah, now we'll see how that plays out. Absolutely. Yep. That facility is supposed to take beans every acre of beans in an 11-county surrounding area in Ohio. So they'll be pulling beans from a long ways away. Yeah, big facility.
More time in the truck for a lot of people.
Yeah. 4 dump pits open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all electronic. It's going to be really, really nice. So,
wow, the neighbors are going to have to catch up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny. That's what we've talked about. The older facilities, older companies that haven't updated anything, they're going to maybe be hurting a little bit once the new dog comes to town and the farmers see the convenience factor and how nice that is, right? So, but we'll see how it plays out here.
Competition's supposed to make you stronger a little bit.
That's right.
Right. Ben, I appreciate your time during 2025 and here as we start 26. It was great to get to know you, and hope to connect with you again in the future and just see how things are going, because it's always fun to hear.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure, and I've enjoyed getting to talk and meet with you as well. And I get a kick out of I've had multiple people message me, hey, I saw you on Market to Market. I'm like, oh my goodness, so that's been kind of funny to get texts of people watching me on their laptop in the morning, drinking coffee on a Saturday morning. So
I need to send you one of these pens so you can sign all those autographs. It sounds like you're having to do.
There we go.
Your speaking fee just went up.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Ben, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
Of course, Jamie, you had to go to D.C. to get snow, right? Because there's not a ton of it back home, is there?
There is not a lot of snow back home in Idaho. Ironically, my husband's actually doing some mowing this week, getting some brush patches cleaned up around the farm. It's abnormally dry for us at home in terms of snowpack. Usually we'd like to see upwards of 2 and 3 feet at the 6,000-foot level, and we have none. So yeah, I decided why not find some snow? I'll come to Washington, D.C. to do it.
You could put some in a jar and take it home too, I'm sure.
That's
just
right.
as a reminder.
Yeah.
We'll get to your husband in a minute because I'll talk about some of the photos he posted since we last chatted. But you're in D.C., it's the middle of a snowstorm, but you're there for meetings, right?
That's right. So every winter, the National Association of Wheat Growers, the U.S. Wheat Associates, and the National Wheat Foundation all gather for a week in Washington, D.C. We get our farmer network together, our staff from around the country, and we talk policy. We educate ourselves on pertinent things that are taking place here in the nation's capital. And probably one of the highlights is networking and visiting with the fellow farmers when we have a minute of downtime. So
And everybody is
fantastic.
navigating their texts right now about, hey, look at my home. Look at my home. Especially if you've got your Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Mississippi people that are at your
Right.
meetings.
Actually, just before I hopped on with you, I got a message that said all of our meetings today are delayed. We're going to push them back several hours to try and accommodate people who are still trying to get into town. I think we might be a day or two till we get everyone.
And you got a couple days until you have to leave, so hopefully it can let the weather thing work through the system.
That's right. And if there's one thing farmers can do, we can go with the flow. We can figure it
Yes.
out, right? We get it done one way or the other. That's the same with meetings here in town.
Is that kind of how 25 finished for you, one way or another?
It was another, right?
Yeah.
It was good to put an end to what was at our house kind of a frustrating year. I think the last time we talked about lack of moisture, we talked about hot weather, we talked about crops that didn't meet their potential, and that was really frustrating. So it was, in a way, it was a relief to just be done and close the book on 2025's commodity year. But here we sit. I guess we have a fresh year. We actually have, we had a fantastic August, September, October when it comes to precipitation. Mother Nature finally showed up at our house, and we got 8 inches during that time frame when usually we would get 3. So in terms of water and a full profile, that's nice. Usually the snow is what fills our profile, so it feels a little strange, but we're happy to have some water one way or the other. But I'll tell you that the low commodity prices across the board is just hanging on and kind of that cloud that won't go away.
Right, and you're not alone. Would it name the crop? It's been the issue. Let's go to the challenges that August rain bring in what your plan is for the next year, because I think you've told us a couple of times how you know that a little bit of moisture is good, but you need it. I mean, you balance so much that I just don't know if everyone quite has to do what you do to make sure that crop comes up.
Right. So for some of your people that might have forgotten or not be familiar, I'm in Southeast Idaho in a high mountain desert environment. We're farming. The low spots are about 5,000 feet. The high spots are 6,200 feet. We're pretty arid. We have maybe 12 to 16 annual inches of rainfall, all dryland rain-fed environment. So for us, it's a science and an art that we've kind of figured out, but it is a little finicky, right? Timely rains really matter. And that was one thing that was nice to finally last fall pick up some of that rain. So we do stick to a pretty consistent rotation on our farm. We don't deviate too far from what the plan is. So what that means is I'm not chasing new exciting things or chasing a high market or trying to avoid a low one. We are pretty consistent. So this last fall, we put in that winter wheat like usual, where all the winter wheat was soft white spring this year. Or sorry, that doesn't make any sense. Soft white winter. All of the wheat was soft white winter wheat this fall. We also put some winter canola in. And the great thing for us is we'll start seeding as early as late August if we can. This year, waiting on that rain that I just mentioned, we did a lot of the seeding in September. So bulk of it was September. But we had a long, warm fall, which let those plants continue to grow well past Halloween, which is really unusual for us.
And I looked at a little bit because does that cause problems when stuff grows so much in the fall?
It for us, not usually. We never really get too big per se because it's a cold place. We'll get our first frost actually in September, so I actually like it where I am if I can get the crops big and established. Maybe I'll come back and tell you I changed my mind on that. But to this point, in our farming career, we've never gone, oh no, this is too big going into fall. So
Yeah.
Okay. All is well.
And
for
I
the
interrupted
moment.
you earlier. Sorry, continue.
I was going to tell you that the other fall crop that we put in was an Austrian winter pea. And that's new for us. We do try a few things here and there to our rotation as as seed varieties improve and we can take advantage of things that might grow in our climate, we always try something new when we can. And so we did 45 acres of that dry pea, and we'll see. Typically, we have experience with peas, but typically it's a spring planted pea for us. So we'll see how that goes this year. Hopefully they've survived. We have had some colder temps this last week without snow cover. So.
And that's when you say colder because of your elevation dynamic, right? I mean, you've got several different elevations you have to navigate. So weather can be both good and bad for you when it's cold or snowy if it doesn't hit everything.
That's exactly right. It probably just sounds chaotic, really, when I talk about that elevation and the high and the low and what's going on. And then, the summer's different than the winter, et cetera. But the one thing that we all have in common is when you get into those single digits and you've got a plant that's exposed to that cold winter air, that's rough. So that's where we need that snow cover to insulate the crops during the winter when it gets brutal.
We're talking optimism at 26. I'm going to go back to 25 for just two more things. What was the worst? What was the best crop?
Oh, worst crop, it was anything planted in the spring, just broadly. So that for us would have been the spring wheat. Safflower is an oil seed that we grow. Spring canola. Just there was not the moisture in that soil to help those crops mature and establish properly and just be healthy and strong. So anything that was a spring crop, we didn't get the potential out of it and the yield that we would have liked. So that was rough. The winter, so then the flip side is that winter wheat, winter canola tended to do a lot better because it had more moisture to grow on, and it was healthier when June turned off hot. So.
And then as you look to 26, you talked about the new crop, the new pea that you're trying. Are you trying, or are you as optimistic in January of 26 as you were in January of 25?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think that in our household, we're probably still worn out from 25. So it's hard to tell you if I'm any more optimistic. From a water perspective, we are definitely sitting better today in the soil moisture profile than we were this time last year. So that's something to be excited about in terms of growing a crop. And it's kind of hurdles, right? There's hurdles all along the growing season from getting the plant established, either if it's in the fall or if it's in the spring, but getting the plant established and growing and healthy and timely rains. I mean, there's very significant hurdles across that whole process. And So yes, a big hurdle right now is having water, and at the moment we've got that.
And I don't think you have a ton of livestock around you, do you?
So there is livestock in my valley, and as a matter of fact, my husband's family we always had beef cattle for about 100 years actually, and he and I phased that out about 7 or 8 years ago because we store all of our commodities on farm. So he spends the wintertime being a truck driver and doing all of our equipment maintenance and repair. And what our issue that we had was that it was just getting very hectic. So in Idaho where we are, you'll typically have your babies, your calves in January, February, and you're finishing up at some point in March, which also happens to be when you're trucking and like I mentioned, that shop work. So we decided as our farm acres grew that we cut those livestock out. But I'll tell you, as a grain person right now, I would really love to cash a few cattle checks. I remember, it hasn't been too long. So it is good for someone to have a bright spot right now.
Well, yeah, and I guess that's what I was going to maybe more have you talk about the expanded around you. I mean, because we always think of your area with high grazing spots and big amounts, and you always hear, oh, we can't graze there because it's too dry, or we can graze there because we have I mean, I just didn't know what you knew about some of those neighbors.
Right. We've got a lot of public lands grazing in my part of Idaho. So there's a lot of the federal and some state-owned lands that are available for leases for grazing. And you're exactly right. It really depends on what kind of snowpack we've had and what kind of rains we've had as to how long that pasture is able to supplement and to feed the pairs that go out on them. So the last few years, it has been a little dry and it's been difficult for cattlemen. They've had to maybe feed longer in the spring than they want to, or start feeding earlier in the winter than they want to, or get creative at finding places where they can put those animals when they're short on rangeland.
All right, you are dressed to go to policy meetings, so I want to talk about policy for just a moment, if I
All
could,
right.
Jamie, because the USDA report that came out a couple of weeks ago was a big deal for corn and soybean. What was it for those of you in wheat country and the impact because of that relationship between corn and wheat when it comes to the market?
Right. So wheat is really a follower to corn. And we like to think of ourselves as that rising tide raises all ships scenario. Well, when corn sees something like they saw in that report, we follow them down. And so it's frustrating. In our world as farmers, it's causing us to ask a lot of questions about the process and how these numbers are calculated and when. And I think I've seen in and I don't know if social media is the best place, right, to get the information, but I've seen a lot of farmers maybe taking more interest in the surveys and wondering, well, hey, I haven't got a survey. I'd like to be in their survey. But there's room for that conversation about making sure we have good, adequate numbers. But for sure, that was a frustrating report to have because right now we need any positive momentum in a market that we can get. And so for wheat, we certainly want corn to succeed. And as a matter of fact, year-round E15, that was something that we were excited about, and we were actually trying to help in places that we could to help that be successful this past weekend. And so we were disappointed as well when things just didn't come together the way we had hoped.
There was speculation on our show Friday with our analysts that possibly this is a kick it down the road to when it's more politically important for someone to make a vote. And that's not probably reassuring to hear to someone who wants or is looking for assistance now or a boost in the market now.
Well, that's exactly right. So the bridge payment is helpful. In ag, we always are appreciative of any time that the lawmakers are listening and trying to help. But we are not, we're not a crowd that likes to walk around with our hand out, right? We much prefer to grow the commodity and prefer to market it in the proper channel and make the money that way. And so when we have these things that have the potential to increase that price for us at the farm gate, that's really what we strive for. And it's hard to tell a farmer, hey, I get that your budget doesn't look good. I get that you're booking seed. I get that you're booking fertilizer. I get that you're making plans and budgets are in the red. Just be patient. It'll happen at the right time. That's not a message that sits very well at the farm and in the household over winter. So hopefully we can get some progress.
Well, what's the focus of the meetings here this week? Is there one just scheduled? Here's your optimism.
Oh, so the optimism shows up, I'll tell you, in the hallway. It shows up in the evenings when we're having dinner or, folks are enjoying each other in the bar or having the conversations. I feel like that we're eternal optimists, but at the same time, there's a lot of really big things that we're working through. So I guess on the positive side, the One Big Beautiful Bill last summer really provided a lot of good key pieces that we would have normally seen in a farm bill. It's really nice that we had, the increased reference prices, the opportunity to fix base acres. There's people out there that don't have base acres for one reason or another. We've got some good insurance provisions. So that's the optimistic side, right, of the things that happen in the One Big Beautiful Bill. But we still don't have some of the technicalities that we need in that standard farm bill. So we need to move the MAP and FMD out of this kind of temporary program that was stood up in the One Big Beautiful Bill. That needs to be permanent. The funds need to be permanent in MAP and FMD in a farm bill. The credit title needs to have some updates and improvements to ensure that we can all still get loans because we know we need them this year. So those are a few, farm bill related things. It seems like that's all we've talked about. And I guess it is all we've talked about for a few years. We have some policy things like MAHA. It was not a very friendly report in terms of wheat. Talking about, it's frustrating to have on a public stage have the role of whole grains diminished in a diet. So we need to talk about how we can approach that and make sure that the consumer still has confidence in grain products when they're at the grocery store. So it's a lot of the typical things that you'd expect, making sure that we still have access to a lot of our crop protection tools. It's the full range, and it's good to get heads together, though. I will tell you, that's where I get optimistic, I guess, is when you bring a group of farmers into a room with an issue and you bring years of very unique life experience with people that want to solve something, you can have some really dynamic conversation, and you can come out with some answers, not just complaining, but some answers and some ideas about how to move things forward. So that's something that's always energizing to me by the time we finish a week here in DC.
As long as everybody can get there. So you can have that. Otherwise, everybody's going to be remote. It's going to be like it was a few years ago where, this person's, because they're stuck at the airport in Huntington or something.
You know, I'm telling you, it's a little apocalyptic here. It's really odd.
I'm not laughing at the apocalyptic part, but I get how a storm can just slam a community like that.
That's
a
right.
Large city. Good thing that the metro runs underground.
Yeah, it still can move. I will tell you, as I'm looking at the forecast and looking at packing warm, right, I thought my warm attire back from home does not work in this town, right? It's a different set of clothing and gloves and muck boots, but
I think they'd appreciate you showing up to a meeting in a Carhartt. I think it would be fine.
I think we'd get some attention. Maybe that's what we should have done, is to really stand out.
Yeah. Well, you're the ones there. You're the ones who made it. Of course, it's like, imagine if you're a policy person in a congressional office. And you're like, of course, the farm groups made it. They can make it through anything,
That's exactly right. It's really one of the guys last night mentioned the most harrowing thing for him was actually just letting somebody drive him from the airport to the hotel in the bad weather. He said it took a lot to sit in the back seat and just let it happen, because that's exactly right. We can get where we need to go. We're not scared of much unless somebody else is driving in a city.
Right. I totally get that. Jamie, I totally get, and thank you for your time in 2025 to chat and get to know more about your operation. And I've been paying attention to Southeast Idaho a lot more, and it's certainly helps us a ton. So thank you for all your time.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a lot of fun to visit with you, and hopefully we've shared a little bit of a journey that your viewers and listeners have been able to enjoy.
Shauna Gracia is the Iowa PBS production supervisor. His crew of Reed Denker, Kevin Rivers, Neil Kyer, Julie Knutson, and David Feingold make this podcast possible through their technical support. David Miller is the executive producer of Market to Market. I'm Paul Yeager, your host and editor. I'll see you next time here. Send me an email if you want, markettomarket@iowapbs.org.